You are listening to the Enormocast.
The year is 2016. We're still reckoning with the sudden mainstream interest in TCKJ and the Dawn Wall. Climbing had been confirmed for the Olympics, and the whining about speed climbing was just getting ramped up. Though his magnum opus, Silence, remained in the future, Andra is tearing up 515, and J-Star is too, just a little more quietly, as is his way. TikTok innocently appears in September, and we remain blithely unaware of what a social media climbing influencer is. Oh, and that kid who flashed your project yesterday wasn't even off her mama's boob yet.
But perhaps the most groundbreaking climbing leap in 2016, at least according to this commercial, the introduction of the Sportiva Squama. So futuristic, it remains cutting edge 10 years on. No one thought a high-performing shoe could handle all terrain and feel this good doing it. Yet there it was, in our hands, on our feet, and nestled in our souls like a little baby bird quietly cooing. And to mark this monumental moment in climbing history, Sportiva has introduced a celebratory color scheme for the 2026 Squama, while retaining its essential nature as the baddest shoe in the land. So go back to the future and head over to sportivana.com or your favorite local shop and check out any permutation of the legendary Squama. And then ask yourself one thing. What would you do for the sand?
We gotta get
Listen, where you playing in town? You playing here?
We're doing the Enormo Dome, whatever it is. It's terrific.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
big
the big
house. We
place,
sold
that
it out.
side of town. That's a
Very
big
nice.
place. You sold it out.
20,000
seats.
We really should.
Look, you better get up there before you panic. Those pens are loose. You're very good. I have really enjoyed climbing with you. We'll make it. I don't think so. But we shall continue with style. Good weather, bad weather. Now or later, anytime for climbing.
Today's show is brought to you by La Sportiva
Arc'teryx Equipment.
and with support from Maxim Ropes. Maxim has been keeping the Enormocast off the deck since 2012.
And don't forget our charter sponsor, Bonfire Coffee. Go to bonfirecoffee.com and enter Enormo at checkout for a discount on great coffee and to support the Enormocast.
And now back to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Enormocast. This is your host, Chris Kalous. It is April 15th, 2026, about 11:30 a.m. here in Colorado, and this is episode 322 of the Enormocast, a conversation with climber, influencer, comedian, Beau Martino. I've been curious to talk to Beau for quite some time. Beau Martino is a comedian, an influencer, a climber. You've probably seen him on the internet if you're on social media. If you're not on social media, may the gods bless you. But most of us are, and you've probably seen a curly-headed Beau Martino doing comedic skits about the dirtbag lifestyle. He was one of the early adopters on TikTok and things like that. So I kind of wanted to talk to Beau to get to the bottom of this movement of the last 6 or 7 years only. If you listen to my epic commercial at the beginning of this podcast, you might have heard me mention that TikTok appeared in 2016. And obviously it took a couple years to get some traction. Instagram tried to catch up with Reels. So this whole phenomena of kind of influencer videos is actually really new. But I think the impact it's had on climbing culture, on the way we look at climbing, and the way we look at so many other things in life has been profound. And I think we're still reckoning with what that influence on our culture has been, pun intended. So this is one of those podcasts where we talk a little bit more about the climbing culture, climbing media, not so much about moves and ascents. But Beau's experience is pretty cool because he's ridden the entire wave and he's actually on the other side of moving away from being a quote-unquote influencer who posts climbing content as something of a career. He'll continue to be in the climbing frame, but as we talk about, he's moving on, hopefully to bigger and better things. He's smart, he's articulate, he's funny, so I hope you enjoy this one. A conversation with climber and comedian, above all else, Beau Martino. Hey folks, As you know, I parade my past dirtbag cred around on the Enormocast like I'm the king of the carnival and 4 Sazeracs deep. Toyota truck, months in the creek, thumbing around Australia, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, most of us are part dirtbag at least part of the time. But even the most committed, ramen-powered 92 Camry-dwelling climber deserves gear that isn't held together by only deep desire and duct tape, and not even the good duct tape. If your current jacket looks like it's been used as a towel, a pot holder, and possibly a dog bed, it's time to level up. Arc'teryx makes gear for dirtbags who secretly want to be warm. For climbers who, quote, don't care about material things, but will get benighted trying to booty that welded totem. Born in the coast mountains of British Columbia, where the weather is basically a hazing ritual, Arc'teryx builds jackets that survive more abuse than your Sprinter's transmission. Well, that's not actually saying much, but you get the point. The Alpha Series, it's a shell to buy when you finally accepted that windbreakers are neither. The Atom, it's the mid-layer that keeps you warm, even when the library finally kicks you into the storm at closing time. And the Fit, so dialed your family will not roll their collective eyeballs when it's the one nice thing you have to wear to your sister's wedding. So stop pretending your seasoned jacket is a badge of honor, or at least leave it in the back seat when you actually gear up for something serious. And go to Arc'teryx.com or your local shop and allow yourself at least one nice thing in your life. You deserve it. Thanks for coming on. I mean, we were just talking about, I think the only time we've met, even though, I mean, I guess like all the years you've been a road dog have been sort of after I am not a road dog, but in the old days we would have met a bunch of times, right? Like in all the places. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere across the circuit.
Yeah, exactly.
The creek or
And,
the valley.
Yeah, one of those places. Or nowadays, 10 sleeps on the major rounds. But yeah, we met in Ouray when I was talking to, getting ready to, or I had just talked to Lindsay Ham for her interview. Yeah, just ran into you. So it's really nice to see you again. And I had hit you up to do it then, and that was like a while ago. And so I appreciate you fielding my request this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that distinctly, and I was pretty psyched after we met. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get to, because you had I think you had floated it at the time, like we should get you on the Enormocast, and
All right.
I was super psyched for it. So I'm glad that it's coming together 2 years later.
Yeah. You know, I have
later.
this. Yeah, I have this thing where, you know, stuff goes by the wayside. You know, you mentioned stuff casual. You know how that goes, but also like a lot of times I feel like, okay, there is a right time, and you know, I'm sure we would have had a great show. But the reason I got back in touch with you at this point was just sort of a post that I read recently. I follow you. I've followed you the whole time, or you know, probably since not too long after you started to kind of become a public figure, if you will, which I look back on through your feed. But yeah, you just had a post up of kind of just, I don't know if it's like a heads up to people who follow you, or it was for your own personal, you know, kind of putting a flag in the ground around a change that you're trying to make. So maybe we could start there, since that's like super current, and we'll just kind of travel backwards on this podcast, where I usually go from the start.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'm curious about is how much of this conversation we're going to have is going to be climbing, and how much of it is going to be the like media content creation side of things. 'Cause I'm very squarely in both. And that post you're referring to was kind of a flag in the ground announcement saying that I'm still going to be climbing, but I'm turning my focus away from climbing, at least as far as the content creation, the comedy goes. And the reason for that is because, well, there's a number of reasons. I live in LA now. I've lived in LA for a year and a half after living on the road for more or less 4 years. And I'm pursuing acting here, acting and writing. And my interests have changed a bit, and it's a lot harder to create climbing content when I'm not living out of my car, climbing and dirtbag content, living out of my car every single day, right next to a rock where I can wake up, open my car door, and there's a big rock in the background. Now I've got streets and traffic and stoplights, but that's another matter. Yeah, that post was kind of like, I had a great time doing the climbing content. I'm still going to be out there climbing. In fact, I think a few days after that post, I was in J-Tree, which was last weekend. And this weekend, I'm going to do basically a road trip to Vegas to climb at Red Rock. So that's all still happening. I just want to focus on other things. I want to create general comedy now. I would say my niche is now what I think is funny and what I write versus what I think the climbing community would appreciate or jokes related to climbing and dirt bagging. And then there's another reason for it is the climbing community. We always talk about how small the climbing community is. Like, of course, if you were on the road, I'm sure we would have run into each other. And so the climbing community is small, which also means the viewership is capped. And I've been creating climbing stuff since 2020. It's almost 2026. So if you, and I say this more self-deprecating than arrogantly, if you haven't seen my content by now, let me say it like this. I've been creating it for so long. You probably, if you're a climber and you're on social media, you've probably seen something I've created. And if you don't follow me by now, I don't think I'm going to get you to follow me. And so looking at it from how do I continue to grow in a way that furthers my goals and what I want to pursue, which is acting and traditional media, traditional entertainment. How do I get myself there? Working in a niche that is capped is going to make it more difficult for myself, while simultaneously changing niches is one of the most humbling things I've done in recent memory, trying to create comedy that is so different from what I've created in the past.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. It's like this sort of double-edged thing where you've reached this cap, like you said. There's only so many people. You're either in or you're out at this point. And now you're going to the mainstream, but the mainstream is, there's this potential to reach so many more people, but also you are just this not tiny little voice now again, which I think is what you're getting at in some ways too, is that, yeah, you had this little space, and I think you were, as weird as it might sound to say this, you were sort of a first to it kind of pioneer of it in many, many ways, or you were with that first wave, which, very much just blew up very quickly. But yeah, so you had this small pool to be a big deal in, and it's, I mean, I admire it. I admired that post because I read between the lines of it, and I said, and maybe you've mentioned it in a few, but that one we're talking about in particular, you were talking about not just an influencer, the film. Yeah, that there's a courage in this. Like, you could just comfortably stay making these videos. You probably could pull it off even living in a house somewhere, as long as you were a little closer to the rocks. I know exactly where you live. I lived almost exactly where you live, so I know it's not easy to get to rocks from where you are. But yeah, so I mean, talk about that. Like it is a leap, and I don't want to blow you up too much, but from a comfort thing to like, oh shit, I'm walking down the streets of LA with all the other ones that are walking down the streets of LA.
Yes, I think you nailed it spot on. Going from being in a very small pool to being in a very big pool and being very small. And there's so much competition, comedy, and competing for attention spans is so difficult. The market is saturated with people creating stuff, so it's really hard to scream out there and be heard. I think you're right. I think you're spot on that I was one of the first movers, at least for short form content on Instagram and TikTok. It was like unintentionally nailed the timing with COVID happening. Everyone's on their phones. I created a video the first day that COVID happened, or that the shutdown happened, and it blew up. I created another one, just kept snowballing. I had everyone's attention on me because no one else was doing it. Everyone was locked to their phone. Everyone was looking for a distraction. So the timing just worked out perfectly for that. And look, I've been riding those coattails ever since. But it did get to a point. It got to a point where short form meme content, which is what I was heavily doing for the first 3 years, things like lip syncing or trends, all climbing focused, it got boring. It wasn't fulfilling. The way I look at it is this short form content is the candy of the entertainment world. It's so easy to consume. You're just ripping through it, scrolling away, and an hour passes and you're like, what did I just watch? I don't remember most of what I just saw. And so you leave viewing that unfulfilled. It's empty calories. And I was feeling that as a creator. So for the past probably year plus, I've been experimenting with other stuff, bouncing around, going back to meme-ish content, doing vlogs, doing stuff totally unrelated to climbing, going back to climbing because that's kind of the safe space with what I've been creating, trying to find my new voice, something that allows me to feel good while still projecting what I want to create on the internet. And so all that culminated recently in this post about this short film I created, which blurs the line between mockumentary and documentary, called Not Just an Influencer. And it's this satirical commentary on the intersection of these wildly opposing worlds that I live in, like diametrically opposed worlds that I live in. One being an influencer and the other being a climber. So this film, Not Just an Influencer, is about a climbing influencer trying to prove to the climbing community that he really is a climber. He's not just an influencer. He's a cool influencer. He climbs. It's about me. I'm myself. I'm playing myself in a characterized comedic version of myself. But these two worlds, on one hand, you have the influencer, which is 100% performative, and so is social media. Social media is completely performative. Whether you are a person posting for 5 people or hundreds of thousands, it's performative. Like that's the very nature of it. By posting, you're performing. The action doesn't necessarily mean it's performative. Like you go climb a big rock, you could be doing that for you, but posting for people to view is performative. Influencing cranks that dial up, and everything you're doing is for views and being seen and getting attention. So that's the one side. And then you have climbing. And climbing it's so raw and hardo. Like I call it a hardo culture. It's very focused on how hard you're climbing, what you're doing. And you hear the term a climber's climber. He was just climbing for himself, which contrasts with doing it for views. And so I've got these two worlds going on. I love climbing, but I'm also making money from these ads I'm doing and sponsored videos. I'm trying to make people laugh, but I'm hyper aware of the connotation of an influencer and what it means to be an influencer. And I make jokes in the film about like the influencer shows up to an area, gets their photo taken, leaves a trace, and ditches. They're high impact. There's an ongoing debate in the outdoor community about gatekeeping versus allowing access. And at the heart of it, a lot of time are influencers who show a cool spot and then it gets overrun with people and the landscape is changed dramatically forever. Or influencers not promoting the correct way to use land and posting about it, putting it online for hundreds of thousands or millions to see. And so there's these two worlds at play, and the entire time I've been doing this, I've been hyper aware of it. And so this film is talking about that. I also go up to a super cool area, the Circle of the Unclimbables up in Canada. Have you been? Did you get to climb up there? Yeah?
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. I went in 96, I think. 96 to climb Mount Proboscis, actually. I haven't been into Fairy Meadows.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
cool.
Yeah. I was
even more badass.
But we went through same you guys went through is it still the Akanu Lodge?
The big fishing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get to take a helicopter to the other drainage, or did you have to?
Yeah, we took a chopper. We took both.
Okay.
We took both. Because actually, it was really, I watched the film and it's cool because you're sitting on that dock when the plane pulls up. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
and that, I mean, it was 20 some years ago, but it was exactly the same, probably the same airplane. Yeah. They keep those things flying, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, we took a plane into the lake.
Yep.
And the chopper, because the chopper doesn't have very much payload, which dropped us and then went down to the lake, picked up a bunch of stuff from the airplane and brought it up to us.
Yeah.
And then they both left. And then we did the same thing on the way out. Actually, it did 2 trips to the lake, I think, because we were in for like 30 some days, and we had like bolts and all the things. So, but anyhow, yeah. So it was cool to watch that film. I mean, there was the one scene with the damn mosquitoes too. I was like, oh yeah,
Oh my God. Everywhere, so many. Yeah, I think we got up into the definitely the hundreds, maybe like 500 plus at the end between all of us. How many we killed?
I also had terrible weather.
Yeah, oh gosh, yeah. I mean, that's how it goes up there. So anyway, that post culminated in me saying, I'm not just an influencer, but I'm also not just a climber.
Right.
And it was this announcement. You know, I don't even know how many people saw that post. It was an announcement for myself, to tell myself.
I kind of felt that, yeah.
Yeah, to be like, this is a new stage or phase that I'm moving into.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we just said that you were kind of first wave. Not kind of, you were first wave, at least in climbing, right?
Yep.
And so you've ridden what we were just talking about, which is that, you know, there was kind of this pleasant sort of feeling like, oh yeah, Instagram's neat, you get to post things. And then, you know, and social media was, I mean, it's all happened so fast that it does feel like 6 years ago, because COVID happened in between there, or right as you started. It feels like it's always been this way, or it's always been one way or the other. But, you know, it did shift towards like this kind of, you know, dividing line. You know, you either love social media or you hate it, but you still do it, which is is like the fucked up people like me too. I mean, I'm somewhat ambivalent. I'm not like a super hater, but I also understand that I waste a shitload of time on it. But the influencer thing also arced through there, and it does, I think, at least within climbing, and maybe it's in the larger world too. There's a negative connotation to it, I think, more so now, and maybe in general, to do with that original thing that you were talking about, this climber thing, you know, this idea that you don't represent yourself in some way that you're not in real life. Or I mean, it's so steeped in this like old school thing, which we've talked about on here, of like, well, you don't spray, or you don't pre-spray, or you don't do these things, you know, to the point where I often point out that there was a time when if like the magazine printed a photo of you on a climb, but you had not actually sent the climb, like that was a big no-no.
Yeah.
Like to the point where I wrote an article in 2005 where we did that. And the woman, Kim Chismazia, who's a Canmore climber, you know, she was like, she didn't like put her foot down, but she was not psyched that we had put this photo. It's a great photo, but she had not actually technically sent the route, which is just like absurd now that you wouldn't post pictures of sending on. But I mean, you know, I guess I don't really have a question other than what has been your kind of like your own awareness of this sort of over this hump of like, hey, we're all just having fun and games, and look at this guy, and to the point of, I mean, I don't know, do you receive kind of like negative hate online about your influencing, or are you able to kind of ride a line of like being everybody's pal?
I would love to say I've ridden the line of being everyone's pal, but I certainly receive hate comments, not as much as some of the people I know who are in climbing and have a following receive, especially women. They have the worst of it. But yeah, and sometimes it's like, for most of the time you don't internalize it. Most of the time it's very but there's been a few through the years of like, oof, that one kind of got me. And I'll even egg some people on. What I used to do a lot of times would be pin any negative comments to the top of the comments, like a pin of shame, so that if they're comfortable saying this online, then I want everybody. And if I got some DMs that were mean, sometimes I'd try and egg them on to get more, just so I could show a pattern of bullying, for lack of a better term. Because if I did ever want to put this person on blast, I would be able to show, no, this wasn't a one-time thing. This was repeated behavior. But yeah, I mean, there's hate, but that's kind of the price you pay for being a public figure. You're allowing yourself to be viewed by many, and you get to feel the applause and accolades from everyone. And then you also feel the other side. So That's just the nature of it. And if you're not all right with that, then wrong industry to be in. As far as what you said about like the climber's climber and old school mentality, what I think about is if some of those old school climbers had an opportunity to make money from climbing, if that amount of marketing dollars was being put into climbing then as it is now, which isn't a lot, it's not a ton. We are still talking about climbing. We're not talking about like cosmetics or hair. Would those climbers who were dirtbags, who are living off of like whatever they can get their hands on, eating scraps, would they do it? Would they have taken that opportunity to become a quote unquote influencer?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think people can obviously point out to things that happened, like the Marlboro commercials and the occasional things that did come those guys' way. Backer was famously, I believe, in a Bronco ad. I know he was, a bunch of those guys were in cigarette ads and things like that. And Camel sponsored, a Bridwell expedition. But of course, that guy smoked like a chimney, so it wasn't too far off to be giving him cartons of cigarettes to carry up Saratori or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I understand that, but there is also, I mean, we can definitely cite even modern people who have just said no, I'm not going to do this. So I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right, because I mean, people want to pay for their climbing, and that's usually the thing,
Right.
But yeah, I just think it's been a fascinating thing. I've discussed it at length with lots of different people, and I definitely have a foot in the old school, and I don't have an urge, unfortunately, to put my ugly mug online or not very often anyway. But yeah, it's been, I think, like I said, when I've been following you, well, let's talk about this. Like, one of the things that you seem to be aware of, and obviously this film is pointing that out, is that you do have a foot in this climbing world, and it's important to you, and you're a real climber, and when I say a real climber, like it's part of your heart, it's part of your passion is to go rock climbing. So to have a foot in that world, you do have a foot in kind of this lore or this mythology or this kind of like paradigm of absolute honesty, which is, not something we've always lived, but it's always been kind of this thing like, oh, did you climb the mountain? I did. Okay, we believe you, kind of a thing. That's the basis of climbing. So I just feel like that's why I wanted to talk to you, is because I'm like, well, he does get it. And that film told me that you understand that, you are walking this line.
Yeah, before coming on this podcast, I had a little imposter syndrome because you've interviewed such strong, great climbers, and I am an extremely average climber. I love it, and I get out there frequently, but I never had I don't know if the desire or the drive or the ability or the time, whatever that key is to get you to the next level. In fact, I listened to Sam McElwain's podcast that you did with her. Mm-hmm. Sam's a good friend, and it was really cool to hear her basically life story as it pertains to climbing and how dedicated and singularly focused on it she was. And I've heard it in bits and pieces, but never in full. And I was realizing, like, that is why she has become so successful at off-whip and climbing it, because she's able to dedicate all of her energy to that. And I was never able to do that, nor was I interested in doing it to that level. But yeah, I think that film kind of addresses some of those aspects of what does make you a real climber, when you do have some self-doubt about where you stand in the greater community.
And and when I say stuff like that, I always get pushback, like real climber. Well, you're gatekeeping and all those sorts of things. But to me, it's like it's just a semantic thing. Like you know it when you see it, and it's like, no, you do not have to be great at it. But, there's just kind of, like I said, there's this passion towards it. Like, mm-hmm. It's just kind of what we expect from sort of climbing. And to be even decent at it, safe, decent, climb a few things that are cool. Like you have to have a pretty strong dedication. And then it's also sort of more of like, yeah, am I in the community? Do I give back to the community? Do I, what do I do that involves me beyond just that I go climbing once in a while? All those sorts of things go into it. But anyhow, I'm just like backing up to head off some of those emails. But let me ask you about this style and your sense of humor, because, I kind of just pick and choose who I like and who I follow. I tend not to follow sort of the super gym-based, goofy, like foibles of like, oh, my chalk bag poofed, and now we're going to do like a fast cut of everybody's chalk bag poofing when they fall off a route. That kind of stuff doesn't interest me. But you had this like sense of humor that, again, it felt like it was original at the time. It's self-deprecating, and maybe it just spoke to me because I was something of a dirtbag too, and kind of pointing out like the absurdities of all that. Like, what was your kind of like, I don't know, it probably wasn't a strategy. It was just like my humor. This is what I like to laugh about. Like, just tell me about those formative kind of like, you're on the road pulling this camera out. What was that like to have people around you going like, why are you over there by your car filming yourself? I mean, it feels like it's always been here, but it wasn't,
Yeah. Oh gosh, it was
like you had to shop around for an iPhone tripod back then. They didn't just appear in your Instagram feed to be sold to you every 2 seconds.
Right. Yeah. My humor leans towards a little darker. I love some dark comedy. I love self-deprecating. The self-deprecating, I think, had two benefits. One, I just think self-deprecating humor is funny. So, and I guess it's kind of easy, but it's also the Eminem defense. It's the Eminem 8 Mile defense when he's rapping in the freestyle championship battle, and he's just calling out all the things that's wrong with himself, and then the other guy can't respond. So there's like there's a little sense of safety there. I think if I'm making fun of myself as a climber and as a dirtbag, then people can't be like, oh, this guy's full of himself. And I think it's also what a lot of people relate to. We find the absurdity and we can relate best to the things that we're intimately comfortable with and aware of. And so if you're a climber and there's something that we all do and there's humor about it, that's funny. Especially if only climbers get it, because that kind of creates you in this in-group. And none of these thoughts were really, like, I didn't have my notebook every day thinking, okay, what is the in-group? What is the thing that I can find that we all do? It wasn't very cerebral in that sense. I was just scrolling TikTok and seeing the trends, seeing the things that were happening, and watching everything through the lens of how can I relate this to climbing. And my strategy started and ended there.
I mean, are you someone though that is like, I mean, maybe this has changed over the years of like, taking notes or if not like literal, like mental, like something happens and you're like, oh yeah, that's got some humor in it. I mean, certainly that's what like Andrew and I do at the run out. Like something happens to us at the crag and I'm like, oh yeah, that's going on the show. We can like tease that into this like commentary / humor bit, are you that person?
I am now. So now I'm trying to create original skits and sketches. And so now I'm looking at the world around me and trying to pick out the things that are humorous about our commonalities. And that's been a trend with an uptick till now. But in 2020, 2021, 2022, no. I don't think I was not out at the crag, not being like, oh, that is something that I could make fun of. Well, a little bit, but not a ton.
So you're like this legit dirtbag dude.
Yeah.
Living in what was your car?
It was a 2006 Subaru Forester named named Rue.
Okay, so you got a Forester. You're not even a van lifer. Which is its own humor. We're talking. We always call out that particular old stereotype of the person who's literally living in their car, not a van. And there's a huge freaking difference of your lifestyle, which is why everybody has vans now. But you're doing that. You make this, you're legit climber dude out just trying to, I'd like to actually talk about that if we have time, how you even got there. But, you make these videos for just the fun of it. It happens to hit at just the right time. Like when do you see it? Because I don't really know how this evolution happened then and how it happens now, but this possibility to make money off of it. Did people hit you up, or did you realize that, oh, this amount of views is worth something, and I can probably talk to somebody about something? Because as the old guy that doesn't get the internet still, kind of, obviously I do, but it's the stereotype. But I don't know how that works.
It was such luck, I guess. I mean, luck was a factor of it. I was creating very regularly, so luck is, what's that saying? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Right.
I don't know. It sounds like something my dad would say. But my first video was March 18th, I believe, March 17th or 18th. And it blew up, and I had no real goals for any of it. And I made another one, and it did well, and I made another one, and it did well. So I'm like, I don't know, 5 videos in, I'm having a blast. I'm making my friends laugh. I'm getting followers. Like, Backcountry has reposted me. I'm on top of the world. And I think it wasn't until 6 months in I could make money. And that only happened because a brand reached out to me. Up until that point, it hadn't crossed my mind at all. But a brand reached out to me, and they said, hey, we like your content. We want to pay you to create some content for us. Are you open to doing it? And I said, people can get paid for this sort of thing. And so that started it. And then it was the next spring, so spring 21, where I had a string of videos that all blew up really well. And then that was when I said, okay, I can focus on this and actually make some amount of money doing it.
And it was like keep you on the road money, or like, oh, I got a retirement fund money.
Oh gosh, I wish. No, it was keep me on the road money. You know what it was at the time? I think it was fall 2021. This was when Instagram created Reels, and they were trying really hard to compete with TikTok. And so they were paying out big money to creators. So I was in Indian Creek. I was there for the fall season, and there was something where I had a month to post as many videos as I wanted to, and based on the total number of views, I would earn money. And Indian Creek at the time, this was just before the influx of Starlinks. I don't think anyone had a Starlink there that season. Now I think you could post and work from Indian Creek. But I was all the way back in Creek Pasture, so about the farthest campground from the entrance. And after climbing multiple times a week, it wasn't every day, but probably like 4 days a week, I would drive to the top of the canyon up to the
the Hart Straw Road up there is where you usually get enough bars to do anything.
Yeah, drive up and down that gravel road waiting for the 1 bar to tick to 2 bars, post the video, and then drive back. And that was probably a 45-minute drive. But I was doing that because I knew that if I got enough views, I would be able to get money to keep me going.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like the technology's changed, the impetus has changed, and you kind of rode that, like the heady days of influencing. There was a lot of money being thrown around, and I think, I don't know if it may be the same amount going to like way more people, so it's like spread thinner, but it feels like that also, like that bubble was quick and didn't burst, but it's a little more limp now. It's more of a limp balloon than it was before.
Certainly.
As everybody got on board.
Yeah, now I mentioned it before, but now the market is saturated with people creating content, and it is a lot harder. Instagram doesn't pay the same, and there's a lot more people trying to do that lifestyle. I've heard this, and I don't have a kid in elementary school or really know anyone in elementary school, so I can't say I know it firsthand, but I've heard that at elementary school graduation type of things, the number one job that these kids are saying they want to be is an influencer or a YouTuber, which is wild to me. But that's like the popularity, and now you have people all trying to put energy into being that, making money on the internet. So it is a nice-ish lifestyle. It lets you travel.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the draw in it.
Well, let me ask you that. I mean, this has been, this quickness of like kind of the rise and fall, so to speak. YouTube's got this whole other thing happening that's kind of juiced it again, but also like massively saturated. I mean, you're talking about podcasting too, in a way. I've lived through this thing where, there's all this pressure to put video out and then, I was alone. You and I have a similar path in that sense. I was like the only climbing podcast for a really long time. Not discounting the occasional climbing content that like the Dirtbag Diaries was doing, but they weren't certainly a climbing podcast. That's not the case anymore. And the same thing, like the money's spread way more thin. People looking for different ways to kind of make it happen. But, talk a little bit about like the downside, which is an interesting part of this, because I find it like hard enough to make the content I make, and I don't make very much. I have appeared in very little video over my lifetime. I find when I go out to go climbing, I've had these ideas about like, I want to go climb and do a podcast while I'm climbing or something. And it just is like, when I get around to it, I'm just like, no, I just want to go climbing. So I have this real, just personally, kind of aversion to this idea that every time I go climbing, I'm making media, and I see it around me, and I'm just like, oh, that seems so like, how are you doing it? But I realize that's my personal choice. But like the content creation thing, everybody who does it talks about the grind, and so yeah, I mean, what I mean, and you've decided, I mean, logistically, but you've also decided to take yourself a little bit away from that grind. So tell me about that a little bit. Just for a cautionary tale for these eighth graders.
I would say the grind has shifted. But as far as, the biggest drawback to it all, in my experience, has been the mental health aspects of it. It does kind of appall me that being an influencer is the number one desired occupation for these young people, because you become so focused on external validation. I mean, there's ways to combat this, but like, basically your sense of, not necessarily purpose, but your sense of how well you do your job, which I think has a large impact on your wellness, is completely at the whim of your followers. And so you're very focused on views and likes and how things are doing. And if things aren't doing well, then that affects you negatively. So I think that has weighed on me. So that has to be the biggest drawback of it all. And then you're right, it does take away some of the fun from climbing, whether that's real or perceived. And what I mean by that is real, like you're out there trying to climb, but you also know you have to film a video. And so you're not fully into climbing. Or it's knowing that you're going to be out there trying to film something and there are going to be people around you and you don't know what you're thinking. But at least for me, I'm self-conscious when I'm out there filming a video sometimes. And so if I'm doing something, one of my antics, which I've done plenty of in public, it's takes a lot of composure to do these silly things in public sometimes, and at the crag specifically. And so you're also internalizing that judgment, whether or not it exists, but of these people around you, and you're trying to combat that.
You'll see someone like me roll my eyes at the very
least, exactly. So. Yeah, and for
I'm
good
sorry,
reason.
but I have to admit it. But I'd be like, oh god, here we go.
right, and that's where like this self-deprecating humor comes in, because it's like, okay, it's all right, I'm making fun of myself. Like, I get it too. I'm in your shoes. I know how silly this is. I know how dumb this is. Yeah, so that's what's going on as well.
Well, it's interesting in the film, and again, I think you made that movie to kind of, like you said, you made that movie to point out a lot of these things, and I don't think he's acting too much, but your partner in the film is that partner of like, yeah, dude, he's me. He's like, what? All right, fine. Like, and I've been in videos as like the background dude or the partner to whoever's doing it, because I'm like, or in the old days, it was more photo shoots. I'd be the belayer, and I'm like, well, blur me out, like,
Yeah.
or whatever. But he plays that part
Yeah.
to a certain extent in the film. And I mean, it's that also has to be something that you're probably thinking about.
That factors in quite a bit. If I'm in a pretty public crag and I'm going to be doing something, I might even tell people like, hey, I'm going to film a video here. Do you mind? Or like, hey, you were in the background of my video. Is this all right? And most of the time they say it's all right because their face isn't super visible, but it's something that you want to get permission for.
Mm-hmm.
And Lucas, my climbing partner, in not just an influencer, he's an atrocious actor. I think I'm all right saying that. I think he would agree with me. In fact, there were some times filming that the entire second half of that film I filmed with a GoPro, and I self-filmed it up in the Cirque. But there would be times where I knew what bit I wanted us to get to, but I couldn't just be like, hey, Lucas, here's the bit we're doing. I would need to set up the video beforehand, have a conversation with Lucas just to try and get his mind elsewhere, and then like have the conversation circle around naturally to the bit, just so I could get that with his true, honest reaction, where he's not acting. Because if he knows the camera's on me or on him and he knows what I'm trying to get, it would fall apart. So yeah, a lot of those reactions in there and what he's saying are like 100% genuine. Especially there's one part we had just gotten up to the bivy ledge, top of pitch 10. And I say, I've adopted this like really positive persona. The climbing's going great, right, Lucas? And Lucas is in the background and gives a very half-assed sure, because we had just had a hell of a day. It's like it's after 10 p.m. at night. He gives a half-hearted sure. And he didn't know I was filming, but that was like his genuine reaction to having an abysmal day. Not an abysmal day, a big day. And I'm asking like, how are you doing?
Yeah. No, I'm Lucas.
Yeah.
Like if I know a camera is on me, I'm the worst.
Uh-huh.
Like yeah. So I'm not cut out for it, which is, something that I've had to kind of think a lot about in terms of this, my kind of personal revulsion of it, where I'm just like, how do people do that? Like, why do that? Like, how can you put yourself out there like that? Which is weird because I do this and I put myself out there, but I think it's for me, it's just a little bit different. This, the online and the visual thing for me is very different, but, I'm ugly. But I also realize that, it's just your choice and it's your personality. And some people are just fine with it. And, my friend Josh Wharton doesn't love it. And, some other climbers that I climb with love it. And I'm friends with all of them,
Yeah. I heard a few things recently. One is embarrassment is an underexplored emotion, which I think has a lot of weight. We're comfortable, well, we might not be comfortable, but sitting with anger or sitting with sadness, those seem more approachable than sitting with embarrassment. So that's something I've been thinking of. And then also, being cringe is the cost of living your dream. I've heard it said that like being cringe on the internet for 6 months is the difference between now and living your dream life. You do see some people on the internet who are in a vastly different income level because of what they've created on the internet. Right. And if they had like 100 followers or 1,000 followers, you'd be like, what are you doing? That's you're embarrassing yourself. But because they have 100,000 or 1 million followers, you're like, go off. Good for you. And I think some people just have varying levels of comfort with all of that. For some people, it's worth it to do that, and they have no self-restraints from it. And some people are like, I would rather
drive a nail through my hand.
Exactly. Then put my face on the internet stating an opinion I have.
Like I said, I know I'm this like bag of contradictions here because I run this podcast my opinions are on here. The Runout's even more opinionated. And so I'm like, talking through my ass in some ways, but I have this very, the act of climbing for me still remains this thing that I'm like, I don't want to be bothered while I'm doing it. And that's really kind of what it comes down to. I've been, offered different ways in which to do media that would be, over the years.
Yeah.
And I've honestly, I did one big movie in not big movie. It was a DVD, like a long-term trip in Wadi Rum in Jordan. And I actually recently got a hold of it and burned it and put it on the internet. It's on my failing YouTube channel. It's not a YouTube channel. It's just a place that has my name on it. But it's there and you can watch it, and it's just like, it's so cringy that I'm so bad on the camera. It's like, unless I'm climbing, like the climbing footage of me, I think I look cool. I'm fucking climbing hard. And then anytime I was asked to sit and talk and do the thing where I like sit on a rock and they, look at the camera and they ask me questions, I'm just like, dude, so bad at it.
Yeah. I think for me, it's like, how do I be genuine to myself? And I really like making people laugh and entertaining people. And simultaneously, it's kind of like a hot dog. You don't want to see how it's made. You
Right.
love the end product. And so people see the end product and it can get laughs. If you were next to me at the crag seeing it being made, you would be like, get out of here. Leave.
Has that happened?
No, it hasn't happened. It's kind of related to what I've said before. I'm
going to punch you in the face if you don't get out of here.
No, I've never been threatened with violence.
That'd be that's a good bit though. You might work on that one.
Yeah. No, I'm aware of the space I'm taking up if I'm doing something like that at the crag, and I don't want to negatively impact someone's climbing day or climbing experience. But yeah, like if I'm comfortable putting forward an effort to make people laugh, then I'm fine with that. Especially because I think the content I was creating not introduced climbing, but for a lot of people getting into the sport, I think it opened up climbing more to them, because I think we had a large influx of climbers during the COVID years, and at least for me, if I'm getting into a new hobby, I'm starting to consume content of that nature, or I'm trying to consume everything that I can about this new hobby. And so I think my content, and I've gotten plenty of DMs about it, like, hey, your content, your climbing stuff really made me excited about climbing, or it made me want to live out of my car. And I thought that always felt good. Made me feel like I was making an impact.
I always make a joke with those people who hit me up like that. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm sort of psyched, but I'm also sort of sorry.
yeah. I apologize for what you've seen.
Yeah. But, like, oh, you live in your car now. Great. And that was because of me? Okay. Well, I hope it works out for you, buddy. But the thing that I find valuable about your content, not across the board or whatever, but I think in general, is that you showed this part of climbing that I think it was even though like your content is, it's like the things that are happening to you are these little bits that you've created and stuff, but they, like all comedy, they have this like kernel of reality in them. And it's a part of climbing, I think, that you were a big part of introducing to the mainstream, because the real mainstream, it's just da 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 da, like the climbers have conquered the mountain again, and blah blah blah, and I've always found that to be really off-putting.
Comedy is one aspect of comedy is taking something that is very common that we can relate to and heighten it in a way. Actually, I've heard it said, this was told to me in a sketch class. Comedy is taking something that we all do, but you're the one that makes us aware of it.
Well, and it's like, I think all of us as climbers have sat in a room with normies, our family, our player, and had to try to explain it. And we can never get to what it's really about because we, at least as outdoor climbers, we'll all in our minds or when we're talking to other climbers, we'll fall back on like, yeah, we were in the creek, but what I remember was that time, so-and-so was around the fire and he, whatever, he tripped and fell in, or like, there's all this like underbelly of climbing that in some ways, like I have always felt like I don't necessarily want everyone to know about it. But at the same time, like if you want to understand why we do what we do at the level we do, like we dedicate our lives, we give up, relationships and professional opportunities and all the things that go with like being a hardcore climber. Here's why. I mean, yes, it's also thrilling to pull those moves high above the ground and get that adrenaline rush and all the things that everybody talks about in the mainstream. But like, look at Beau Martino's stuff. Like this is living the authentic climbing life, even if you're making it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's like a romanticized aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I think back to my journey back in the 20 teens, before I was living in my car, I was living in San Francisco, and I was doing in the summer just about every weekend trips to Yosemite, 5 hours one way to Yosemite to climb there and then go back, the weekend warrior life. And I remember at one point I got introduced to this guy who was living out of his van and had like worked at Facebook and then quit to live in a van. And I was like, whoa, that is the coolest thing ever. And that was the first time I think I ever heard the term dirtbag. And I think like if I had gotten to see what his life was about, I would have been just so infatuated, at least if it was romanticized. And I think that's what a lot of my stuff did. It romanticized this aspect of eschewing traditional society, or the dirtbag core, eschewing traditional society, living minimally to pursue a passion, to climb. And I think that's what a lot of people, they have this aspirational desire to do that while they're working their 9 to 5 or in the office. They see someone out there doing that. And I think that's what has a lot of these people now that are creating dirtbag-ish content, life on the road, climbing.
Right.
That's what they're all selling. They're all selling an aspirational lifestyle of look how free I am. Look at fun I'm having. Look how much I'm taking advantage of life. That's really what they're being sold. And if we want to get down to the nuances of it, I would not consider myself an influencer. I would consider myself a comedian or a content creator, which Cody Townsend actually wrote a really good article on his site about how to the outside world, an influencer and an athlete, like a climbing influencer and a climbing athlete are the same thing. The outside world doesn't see the difference because they're not in the community. If you're in the community, you can see immediately what's the difference between an athlete and an influencer. Similarly to like the content creation world, to everyone else, I'm an influencer. I have a following and I'm doing that. But my purpose wasn't to influence. My purpose was to entertain. And I think that's probably why you appreciate it more, because influencing kind of has this idea that I'm selling something to you. I wasn't selling anything to you. I was trying to make you laugh, highlighting the funny and odd and quirky nature of being a climber and living out of your car. Yes, I had sponsored videos at times, but to me, an influencer is like the quote unquote, or the stereotypical lifestyle influencer that's like doing get readies with me and look at these products that I use and come with me for a day, which seems very, I mean, if we're going to put levels to it, seems even more performative than creating comedy. Or it's like phoniness performative. Look at me going about my day, but I'm going about my day because I want you to see how good it is. Versus me, where it's like, here's some comedy. The only reason I created this is not to show you how like great this life is. It's to make you laugh. I have a following because of the comedy, not because of my climbing ability. And I'm completely fine with that. There's no qualms about that. I wasn't trying to be an athlete. I was trying to entertain.
Well, it's interesting too, because I mean, when Sam wrote that article about how women get pigeonholed as influencers, she used Anna Hazelnut as an example. But then when I talked to Anna Hazelnut herself, she was like, "Oh yeah, no, I was, and and now I have shifted towards athlete." Like she literally said it, and it was like, yeah, because of what my goals are, where I'm putting my energies and things like that, And so it's like there, like even in her mind, there was some difference.
Yeah,
but I don't know what it is, and I don't necessarily want to get into that debate right now. But it's just it was just interesting. Of like, again, we're in this weird place in climbing where like there's this literally like a backlash.
Yeah,
and we're trying to figure out what the soul of it all is.
Right.
In a sense,
the point that stuck with me the most from that article, from Cody's article, because I agree with you. Within the community, you can see, and maybe there's like a blurred line in the middle, but what stuck with me was like from the outside world, someone that knows nothing about climbing, they don't really care if it's influencer or athlete. To them, it's like you're the same thing. What are we talking about?
But I don't care what the outside world thinks.
True. I'm not on an outside world podcast. I'm on a climbing podcast.
Yeah, I mean that honestly, like I don't, and I never have, and climbers really never have. We actually started all out as counterculture people who wanted to do something different. So you've changed streams. You're obviously looking for opportunities that are going to further your career. Make you more money if you can find that opportunity. You also were recently, on Naked and Afraid, which was an opportunity that came your way. And so what I want to ask you is like, it seems like other than, these ways that you were making money living on the road, maybe making enough to put some away, buy yourself, a new transmission or whatever you needed for your car. It seems like the climbing content is something that's created a few opportunities for you. Is it your calling card? Is it your sort of like, well, look what I was managing to do then, give me some opportunities and I can go bigger?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning on it heavily. And I have so much to attribute to that climbing content. This whole acting journey that I'm on, that started because I had, at the time, an internet friend, Katie Burrell, who I think is the funniest person on the internet, makes outdoor comedy. She was writing, directing, and starring in a film. Actually, we met up in Revelstoke, and she was telling me about it, and I said, hey, I've never acted before, but would love to be a part of it. So got to act in that film, and I was also on the production side, so I got to see both things. And I was thinking, 5 years from now, I don't want to be making money on TikTok. I don't want that to be my main revenue stream. What is my exit strategy? And I had fun acting, so I said that's going to be it. So the climbing content has led to now this more traditional acting. And because of the following I've created, and because I've been an outdoor creator, Discovery reached out to me and I got to go on Naked and Afraid. And that was a wild experience. It was, what's the longest you've ever been naked in your life? Maybe 20, maybe 24 hours. I don't know.
Not even. I mean, after you're like a child, obviously. Yeah.
Right.
As an adult, for sure.
14 days. I was naked for 14 days. Didn't look at the internet for 14 days as well. Those two things you don't get to experience really in day-to-day life. Aside from building my own shelter, living in it, catching my own food for 14 days, filtering my own water for 14 days. Besides all of that, it was just a full-on experience. It was hard at times. It was really rewarding. I went in with pretty clear intentions that I wanted to get out of the show, which I think helped a lot, helped guide me through it. There was like minor conflict at times, but we used such good conflict resolution skills. We had good communication, or when we didn't, then we made sure to talk about it. Yeah, it was just like it was very primal. It was a very primal experience. I got to learn intimately why we have anxiety as an evolutionary survival skill or trait. It's not to protect you from sending an email or like calling a doctor's office. It's because if you are worried about things that could harm you, then you are going to prevent those things from happening, or you're going to focus on them.
Right.
For us, it was losing fire. Fire was, well, it was basically rain. I had rain anxiety. Most nights we had at least a little drizzle of rain, and a few of the nights we had really heavy rain, so much so that it was leaking through our roof and keeping us awake. And anytime that happened, we would lose our fire, and that meant we weren't able to cook food the next day or whenever we got fire again. So I had anxiety every night where if I heard a tiny bit of rain rustling up in the trees, then I would wake up and it would be hard to go back to sleep. So that was like the whole second half, days 7 through 14. I learned resource scarcity. I learned risk aversion. Like, is it worth it for me to go walk out on these sharp rocks to bust oysters off the rocks to eat? Or can I just go without eating for a while longer? Things like that were just the daily equation of my life for those days out on the island.
So it's like a contest though, right? Is there some sort of contest nature to it? Has to.
It's collaborative, not competitive, Naked and Afraid.
Okay.
There are other shows that are a contest. This one is you're with a group of people and you are working together to survive whatever time frame that has been set. So for us, it was 14 days. I was in a team of 3, including me. And on the other side of the island, there was a team of 2. So we were 5 people in total. We came together about halfway through to form a group of 5. But yeah, we were working together. So building shelter, getting our food, filtering water, all of that was collaborative.
Let me just ask you about the moment. Like, you've agreed to do this.
Yeah.
You ostensibly get boated or floated or whatever, flown to this island, and then you take your clothes off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what was that? Like, what was the moment where you were like, oh, wait, I got to take my clothes off now and I don't get them back for how long? Like,
you know, the nakedness wore off very quickly.
I'm sure it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking you about the moment of realizing that, oh yeah, this is what I signed up for.
It was kind of like point of no return.
Right.
You know, you're just like, here I am, all out there for you. Hope you enjoy the view. And then you just try and not really think about it. And then you really don't think about it. But for the
Right.
first, like when you're stripping down, you're like, this is normal, nothing weird here. They've seen they've seen everything. The production team that's filming, they've been doing
Right.
it for, I don't know how long the show's been around, 15 years. So yeah, you just kind of try not to think about how absurd the whole situation is, which, based on our conversation, hopefully you've gathered that I am all right with absurdity at times already.
Mm-hmm. No, it seems like, yeah, that was a culmination of a lot of things for you. But
Yeah.
so let me talk about that opportunity thing. You know, that comes your way because of a relationship. Most things do, these sort of networking things. I mean, is that like, oh wait, there are these opportunities out here now? Was that like a springboard in that sense, or making these movies? Like, because that's, like you said, what is luck is preparedness and opportunity, or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody does that. They're like, oh wait, I need to seize this. I need to build on it. I need to make connections here.
Yeah.
You know, what was the thought process as these opportunities were arriving and you were taking them,
With Naked and Afraid,
or you are taking them?
Yeah, with Naked and Afraid, when they first reached out, it was like, all right, I gotta have a conversation just to see what this is all about. And it just progressed. It's like one conversation, okay, we're gonna set you up on another call and you're gonna talk about this. I was like, oh, okay, guess I'll do that. And then it just progressed to the point where they said, okay, we want you on the show. And I said, okay, I guess I'm going on the show. And I'm still trying to figure it out. The episode hasn't aired yet. It will latest I've heard, it will air in February or March. So maybe not too long after this episode airs. But I'm curious what it's going to do for me in the viewership realm. The big goal, of course, for me is acting. I don't think my step to acting in a Marvel film is going to be Beau's a climbing influencer, Beau is on Naked and Afraid, Beau is in a Marvel film. I don't think it's that linear. Like, I don't think there's a casting director who's going to be watching Naked and Afraid and be like, oh, we need to get him in there. But I don't think it's going to hurt. Well, it's definitely not going to hurt.
Right.
It's eyeballs and awareness, if nothing else. And so because of that, like, yeah, I'm excited about it, and I'm open to those sorts of opportunities, and we'll see what else comes my way.
What's your dedication to the craft of acting?
Of acting?
What are you doing in that realm?
Well, let's see. I am taking acting classes. I'm taking screenwriting classes. Writing came about. I love writing now. Writing came about because I have an actor friend, and she told me that I should get into writing because if I write my own parts, then I can just be in it. So like, oh, brilliant. So been writing, taking acting classes, auditioning when I get requests for that, and then this past, well, I guess all of 2024 up until kind of like a year and a half, I wrote and produced and starred in a short film about a dirtbag living out of his car in a ski town in the winter called Off Piste. And that's not out yet. It was in one film festival this fall. So that was my first like big writing project.
So scripted.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Mockumentary style.
Okay.
Which I seem to be drawn to. I like that. And then also I have an idea. So I say I'm getting out of climbing while simultaneously wanting to write a climbing centric sitcom web series. And I don't want to, I'm not going to share too much about it, but my best friend down here in LA, he and I want to work together on it. But basically using it will be gym focused, like not outside, but using the climbing gym as a water cooler for comedy. It's where the friends meet.
It's like the coffee shop.
Yes, exactly.
One last question. You know, we opened and you talked about this in an email to me too, of like, again, like, are we talking about media? Are we talking about climbing? And you asked me to like, or not asked me, but you were like, yeah, my first video was this date. You can scroll back and see it if you want. And I did. And I've been doing that. It's been part of my research. It's been a lot of fun lately is to scroll back on people's Instagrams. And we're getting to the point where even 20 somethings, I can go back to when they were like in middle school or whatever, which gets a little creepy sometimes, but just the thought of it. But, with you, there was this, you were pretty typical before that, like sharing your life, climbing with your girlfriend, I assume at the time, or people anyway. And, just the typical, here I am out climbing, look at me kind of a thing. Yep. And then that kind of shut off. Like, what is your line with, or what do you think about in terms of sharing your personal life versus what you've created to a certain extent as a character, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a, it's a mirror of who you are. You're a funny guy that's like joking around, I'm sure, with your friends all the time. But what's your line? Because that's also a thing we're kind of debating, and we're like trying to figure out with social media is that line between how much to share and how much to have this sort of barrier between what's your actual personal life.
While filming, especially when preparing for Not Just an Influencer, since it's about me, I needed to delineate like which Beau we were talking about. So I am Beau 1. Beau 2 is the Beau that appeared in Not Just an Influencer. And then Beau 3 was the persona, was the character that Beau 2 played in Not Just an Influencer. It gets confusing, but anyway, yeah.
Hopefully not for you.
Yeah.
You have three Tinder profiles is what you're getting at.
Yes, exactly.
I'll be whoever you want to be.
Yeah. I'm a mirror. I'm just reflecting back at you. Yeah, so I was sharing pretty typical stuff. And then when I started doing the social media stuff, I mean, it's the whole landscape of social media now. It is so rare to see, I think, well, so much more rare to see just your friends on your feed. Now you're like scrolling and seeing these strangers and whatever they've created. And I think that switch for me was realizing like I'm getting views and there's an opportunity here to be to pursue this. So I guess I'm like at least 6 months in at this point. There's an opportunity to pursue this. I should focus on that sort of stuff. And I think the like personal life took a back seat at that point. One of the things you need to be aware of for definitely for worse, not for better, for worse as a creator is like your engagement, because that's what brands care about. How what sort of views and engagement, that's the name of the game for them. So if I'm posting personal stuff, then that's getting fewer views, and so you want to focus on this comedy. And I never did create like a private Instagram to share that sort of stuff. Kind of just fell to the wayside, I guess. And I think I'm trying to do more of that now, share more of my personal life. But I think it's an ongoing conversation I have with myself of like, do I split off? Do I create an entirely new account for these original sketches that I'm writing that isn't influenced by the climbing followers I have? Do I create one that's just personal where I can just put stuff there? Do I create a poetry account? Do I create a hobby account? I don't know. It's
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a brave new world. And I mean that, sincerely, like you're leaving your comfort zone. You're throwing yourself to the sharks. I mean, it's famously, I lived there. I was not in the industry, but I had plenty of friends who were, and it's shark infested water where you're going. So I appreciate you sharing all this with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a nice culmination of I just took not just an influencer on a little West Coast film tour, and it wasn't supposed to be like a goodbye to the climbing creation world, but I guess it turned out to be that. And the theme is very on point for that. And so this conversation is a nice capstone to that. And I hope it is a grueling world that I'm moving into, but what I joke with friends, and I say as confidently as I can, in 5 to 10 years, I will be on stage telling great stories, maybe in a setting not dissimilar to this on a podcast, but telling stories about how the grind was getting to that point, this is what this is right now. This is a conversation about the grind that got me to this point. And that was about 6 years ago. We'll see what 6 years from now has in store for me.
And you'll always have climbing.
Yeah. It's going to be nice because climbing is going to return to a pure hobby for me. And I'll get to be at the crag rolling my eyes at the person filming. And like, God, I'm just here to climb. No, I'll give them support.
The height of irony.
I'll cheer them on.
You'll be crushed.
Yeah.
At that point, the irony will literally crush you.
I remember.
Our iPhones only had one lens on them.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
All right, folks, thanks for listening, and thanks to Beau for sitting down. I think he put himself in a vulnerable position coming on the podcast. He was worried that he wasn't some hot shit climber, which I assured him is not all we do over here at the Enormocast, as you longtime listeners know. But he was also here to represent for a medium and a style of media that not everybody loves. So thanks again to Beau, and good luck on turning the corner to something even more challenging and vulnerable, which is trying to make it on the mean streets of LA. So if you want to follow Beau, you can on Instagram at @CBeauMartino. I assume it's similar on TikTok. As you might have guessed, not a TikTok guy. Also, he has a YouTube channel where you can find that film we talked about, Not Just an Influencer. And finally, if you want to see his blurred out naughty bits, check out season 19 of Naked and Afraid, wherever you can stream the Discovery Channel. HBO, Hulu, I don't know. Lots of places. The internet will tell you. I don't have any of them, so I have not seen it yet. I will be checking it out if I can. And he's not the only climber to be on there, I'm sure. There's been many. But specifically, climber and former RAB rep Marissa Benkoski's been on there. I had the pleasure of doing some events in Michigan with Marissa. She's fantastic. All right, folks, put down your phone. Get out there and have some fun. And of course, don't forget to check your knots.
Top of pitch 10. We made it. This is gonna be maybe our bivvy spot. Climbing has been great. It's hard and the chimney was long, but we're feeling positive. Right, Lucas?
Sure.
This film, it's kind of taking away from some of the fun with climbing and just being here. What am I trying to prove anyway? Wait, are you recording?